Welcome to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me. As always, the NFL Combine is just in a few weeks. The next phase of the pre-draft process is on the horizon, but here at Saturday to Sunday, we are watching prospects wire to wire. Over the last week or so, I dug in to 6 prospects who I think are generating a lot of buzz and have seen their draft stock out there in the public rise up a little bit, but I do not think they are getting nearly enough attention that they should. I did a deep dive, 6 detailed film analysis, all in the scouting notebook as well. Current rankings on them, draft projection, strengths. 6 guys who are all going to be at the combine who I think has seen their stock rise, but you just don't see a lot of people talking about them. They were all guys who were at the Senior Bowl, but even at the Senior Bowl, I don't think they were generating a lot of buzz relative to their peers at the positions. Some guys have been generating a little bit more buzz than others, but I wanted to take a deep dive for myself to watch these 6 prospects that I think are generating a lot of buzz and have seen their stock rise, and I still don't think enough people are talking about on draft Twitter, and out there. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to share my film thoughts, share my analysis on these 6 prospects that I think aren't getting enough love, but I think they are generating buzz and are going to have their draft stock improve between now and then. And I don't know if enough of the mainstream consensus who really start getting into prospects now have heard about a lot of these guys. And I don't think they've seen them on pretty high on rankings on a regular basis from a lot of evaluators out there. So that's what I'm going to kind of get into today. We're going to start at the quarterback position. I have 1 quarterback on this list, and that is Tyler Shough out of Louisville. He's been generating some buzz on draft Twitter by a few evaluators, but still not being looked at, I think, where he should appropriately be valued, which is a day 2 prospect. I think I like him better than Quinn Ewers. I like him better than Will Howard. I like him better than Kyle McCord. And I know it's kind of hot take-ish, but anyone who's listened to me for a while knows my reservations on Jackson Dart. I don't think there's much of a talent disparity between Tyler Shough out of Louisville and Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. I understand that the big knock on Tyler Shough is his age. He'll be a 25-year-old rookie. But if you take that out of it for a second, and that's the reason why Dart's going to go higher than him in the NFL draft, but if you take that out of it and talk about just the traits in terms of translating to the next level, I think Tyler Shough is right there as good of a prospect as Jackson Dart. So haven't done a deep discussion on him. Obviously, I talked about him a little bit going into the Senior Bowl preview and then the Senior Bowl recap, but I think he warrants a little bit more discussion. So that's where I really wanted to dig in, watch as much film on him as I can before I kind of shared my full detailed thoughts. And that's what I'm going to do today. So obviously, redshirt senior out of Louisville, had a lot of injury issues in the past, missed seasons, which is why he is the age that he is. He's 6'5", 224 pounds. Last year for Louisville, he threw for 3,195 yards. 62.7% completion percentage, 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So I've already alluded to me, the 2 biggest areas of issue with him: the age, not a lot of, you'd like to see somebody like Jackson Dart much younger, more development, more growth still possible. But on the flip side, it's the quarterback position. So quarterbacks, I feel like we're seeing them play way into their mid-30s and late 30s and sometimes even their 40s, but we know that's rare. So even if a prospect comes in and he's already 25 or 26, yes, that's not ideal. But at the same time, if you think you're going to get a guy who could down the line either be a high quality backup or develop into a starter, does it really matter that he's already in his mid-20s? Even if he started and took the reins for as a starter at 27 or 28, if he could be a good player, you could get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years out of him if he's a good starter. So I'm less concerned about the age in terms of the longevity of his career. I could understand somebody's valid point where he there's more growth and development for a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old than someone who's already 25, 26. So I understand that aspect. But in his case, he missed a lot of time due to injuries. So it wasn't like he's just been playing in college all these years and had a lot of reps. So I think there's a point and a counterpoint to the age thing. Obviously, missed seasons due to injuries and durability. I'm one of those people where you miss time and you're injury prone until you're not injury prone, right? And he stayed healthy this year. We see that. So I don't knock players too much on the injury past. I think it's something we got to acknowledge and understand that it happened. If it was like a concussion issue, that to me would be, more concerning. But, he had like a broken clavicle one year. I think he might have broke it a second time. So there's been these missed seasons and missed time due to these injuries like that. But I'm not going to knock somebody on things that could happen to anybody at any moment at any time. The other aspects of his game that I think need some improvement, and I would put under the developmental areas, are he's a little inconsistent handling pressure. The footwork sometimes he's got to be cleaned up a little bit for someone who's got a really clean release and a nice quick release, clean release, quick delivery. The footwork sometimes doesn't match what we're seeing. So sometimes I think the footwork, and I think some of that is when he is handling pressure, he rushes a little bit, doesn't set his base. So I think the footwork area is a little inconsistent. I like to see him improve that a little bit. I think the inconsistency in terms of handling pressure, which is obviously not something that a lot of quarterbacks handle well, especially at the collegiate level. So that's an area where I think he could show improvement. And I know while I think he's an average to above average athlete, he doesn't have a lot of rushing production on his plate. I think he's going to be more of a traditional pocket passing quarterback. So you're not going to get a lot of rushing production out of him, but he is a better athlete than I think people realize. And I'll talk about that momentarily. So those are the areas that I would kind of say I'd like to see some growth and development with him. The things that he does offer, obviously he's got that ideal size and frame. If you're talking about what your ideal quarterback would look like in terms of size and frame, Tyler Shough is just that. 6'5", 224. That is like right out of central casting what you would want your quarterback prospect to look at. In terms of his arm talent, I think his arm talent, I would classify it as good to very good in terms of the velocity, the strength to push the ball vertically down the field, outside the numbers. He can make NFL throws. I love his ability to change his arm angle and throw from different trajectories. We saw some nice sidearm throws when he had to. We obviously see him throw over the top, but I do think having that in his repertoire, to be the ability to throw accurately from multiple arm angles and different platforms, really helps the quarterback out. I think he's got really clean mechanics. I already talked about that. The delivery, quick release, delivery smooth and clean. I think he throws a really good touch. His tape is littered with him throwing really nice touch passes, leading the receivers, taking some, velocity off of it to put it in the right spot. We see so many quarterbacks, it's just one speed all the time. Shough does a really good job at changing his speed of his passes, putting more touch on it, rifling it in when he needs to. So I was impressed with that. I would classify his athleticism as probably average to above average in terms of his athleticism and mobility. I think for a guy 6'5", 224, he's not a slow athlete. I think he's going to win mostly from the pocket, but he has shown the ability to move laterally side to side, buy time in the pocket, and also show functionality in terms of throwing on the run. I would probably classify the accuracy and the ball placement as probably average to above average. I don't think it's like one of his like top traits or top calling cards to somebody like Shedeur Sanders, but I think combined with the arm talent and the functional athleticism, I think you package it all together, and it's a really intriguing prospect. I would probably say also functional at working through progressions, his pocket presence, and anticipatory throws and decision making. Like I said, with the handling of pressure, I think there's sometimes he's got to clean up some of those issues. But I would say nonetheless, I wouldn't put it as a strength of his, but I would put that he shows functionality in a bunch of those areas. So when you take into account the arm talent, you take into account the size and the frame, you take into account he can throw from different platforms and different arm angles, quick release, clean delivery, average to above average athleticism and accuracy. I think there's a lot to like about Tyler Shough's game that, to me, when I look at him right now, I think he's got a real chance to go on day two. We don't know all about the injuries, the age. So I kind of put a round 3, round 4 grade on him in my scouting notebook. But I think there's a real chance that a team's going to really like what they see. And I would not be surprised if late round 2 or early round 3, he comes off the board. I do think Jackson Dart will go substantially higher than him based on the age, no injury questions. And there's been enough buzz about that. But I think that on talent eval alone, there is not a big gap between Tyler Shough and Jackson Dart. Someone who I respect tremendously. He's been on the pod multiple times. Dane Brugler in his most recent top 100. After I did my film eval, I like to kind of see where other people kind of have them. He has them like 57 and 59 or 55 and 57. So he doesn't have a big talent gap between them. And I kind of see it very similarly there with Dane in terms of that. I still personally have Jalen Milroe as my third quarterback. I know that is not the consensus out there. He was not in Dane Brugler's top 100. So for him, Jackson Dart was his third quarterback. Tyler Shough was his fourth quarterback. For me, I have Jalen Milroe still at number 3, followed by Jackson Dart, followed by Tyler Shough. I think Sanders and Ward should go 1, 2. I think those other guys should go 3. But I think Shough with Dart and with Milroe are very intriguing round 2 type prospects. They all offer a lot of different stylistically in terms of how they play. But I think going back to Tyler Shough, I think teams are going to probably be impressed with him the more they watch him. And if they get past the age and they're okay with the injuries and the medicals check out, I think Tyler Shough's stock could really be rising. And you're not seeing him ahead of a lot of people like Quinn Ewers and Will Howard and Kyle McCord and guys like that. He might even be behind people like Dylan Gabriel for some. But if they haven't gotten a chance to watch him yet, and they do, I think people are going to come away impressed with Tyler Shough and have him a little higher up on boards than what we saw originally right after the college football season, even leading into the Senior Bowl. A lot of prospects out there. Not everyone can do a deep dive on everyone all the time. But the more you watch of Tyler Shough, the more impressed I came away with him to think he's a really intriguing day 2 prospect that I think some teams are going to be really interested to get in their quarterback room. Let's take this next to the one wide receiver that I have on this, and that is Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams out of Washington State. Really intriguing prospect that I think you're going to see in a somewhat down wide receiver class. You're going to see him, I think, be intriguing prospect somewhere on day 2. I'd be surprised if he's not in the mix late round 3 or early round 4. The senior out of Washington State, 5'10", 182. Last year, he caught 70 catches for 1,198 yards and 14 touchdowns. I already mentioned it, so let's start there. Obviously, the size and frame isn't ideal, right? 5'10", 182. So we're talking about an undersized wide receiver, not a guy who is going to be great beating physical press. Play strength, contested catches, not going to be his area where he shines. There's some serious drop issues, so the hands are a question mark. I think there's some route refinement that needs to be doing. He's gotten away a lot with his speed and athleticism that I think his route tree is a little limited, and he's got to expand his route tree. So those are the things that are developmental areas, weaknesses, concerns, however you want to classify it. And there's obviously a decent amount there, right? The size, the frame, the play strength, contested catches, physical press, getting off the releases off of physical press. The route tree is a little limited, and he needs to refine his route running. But again, if we only focus on the negatives of prospect, we lose out on what they do bring to the table. And what Kyle Williams brings to the table is, yes, an undersized, but explosive athlete. An explosive vertical slot wide receiver, and can be used as an offensive weapon to manufacture touches for. We're talking very good athleticism, speed, movement skills, separation quickness, acceleration and burst. He's got great yak ability with agility and elusiveness to make people miss in the open field. He, even at 5'10", he's got great leaping ability with body control and ball skills with the ability to adjust. So you can use him in a variety of ways. He can be a slot prospect where you just manufacture touches on screens and quick slants and jet sweeps and stuff like that. But he's also a guy that can attack vertically. He's got that explosive capabilities. So if you get a clean release and you can get a free release, he can be an explosive weapon down the field. You take into account he's also got that leaping ability to go up there, and with that ball skills and body control and leaping ability, he's not only a weapon in the short to intermediate, but he's got the speed, explosiveness, leaping ability, and ball skills to be a weapon down the field as well. I think he profiles as a complementary starting wide receiver with the upside to be top 3 on a depth chart as a vertical slot wide receiver and used on manufactured touches. I got him in that round 3, round 4 grade, which is kind of what you're going to see about all these prospects I'm talking about, right? I said the same thing about Tyler Shough, right? I think you draft him and expect maybe high-end quality backup, and if he materializes into a starter, great. But that's a lot of these guys I'm going to have in that round 3, round 4 border. Same thing with Kyle Williams. I think he's got a real shot to go somewhere on round 3, just because I don't think it's that strong of a wide receiver class. Right now, for me, he's right around my 15th wide receiver. Obviously not until like I do my tier buster shows and post combine, but I think he's going to be right around that range for me. I could see him moving up 1 or 2 spots. I could see him moving down 1 or 2 spots. So I think for me, he's going to be in like that 13 to 17 range is where you're going to have Kyle Williams for my ranks. Right now, like I said, I put him right at the 15th mark. I don't know if there's going to be 15 wide receivers in this draft class, but how many how great the running back class is, how great the tight end class is. It might be tricky to get 15 wide receivers in the top 100. So it's possible he falls to the early portion of day 3. But if you're looking for an explosive vertical slot, Kyle Williams is one of the best in this class in terms of what he brings to the table. And I think teams, as they watch more of him, if they have it as more draft evaluators and draft Twitter sees him more, I think he's going to test great at the combine. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more buzz out there. I know Mel Kiper was mentioning him on one of his like sleeper podcasts in terms of like prospects that could go like day 3 that he's really high on. I think I might even be a little bit higher than where Kiper has him. Like I said, I think he warrants going on round 3 somewhere on day 2 because of the big playability he has, and you could use him in a variety of ways near the line of scrimmage as well. So I'm a fan of Kyle Williams out of Washington State. Now, obviously, they did a lot of stuff where they got him the ball really quick and let him use that speed after the catch and that playmaking ability. And you also saw the vertical shots. So I do think there is, while the separation quickness is good, and we see that especially on the vertical plane, there's not a lot of route refinement, right? So I would think the route refinement and the route tree is something that kind of has to develop and grow. But if you have a plan for this guy to get him the ball, near the line of scrimmage, short to intermediate stuff, and then also take your vertical shots, that 10 to 20-yard range is not going to be Kyle Williams' forte early in his career. You want to use him near the line of scrimmage on short stuff and then get him in open space, or you want to take vertical shots with him. And if there's a offensive team, scheme, coordinator, coach that's looking for a guy like that, I think Williams is one of the better ones in this class that offers that combination of the yak ability near the line of scrimmage, but also could take the top off defenses over the top as well with big playability. So I think Kyle Williams is a guy who, like I said, I would take him in round 3. I think he could go early round 4, but he's on that round 3, round 4 bubble for me. Next up, I'm going to take this to the one tight end I have on my under the radar prospects that I think our stock is on the rise, and that is Thomas Fidonen out of Nebraska. He's a redshirt junior. He's 6'4", 241 pounds. Last year, he had 36 receptions, 373 yards, and no touchdowns. So we're not talking about a guy who's got gaudy stats. We're not talking about a guy who's got great size or frame for the tight end position, because I think he's got to add to that frame to become more of a guy who can hold up in line at the next level. So only average size, needs to add to the frame to play more in line. But what he does offer to the table is good athleticism, movement skills, speed, and quickness. You see Fidonen after the catch. You see him attack the seam. You see a good athlete for 6'4", 241 who can be a playmaker in the passing offense. Now, Nebraska didn't have an explosive pass offense. They started out hot and then kind of had some struggles after that. Fidonen offers good length, catch radius, athlete with leaping ability to extend and high point the football. I like the body control and the ball skills. He shows good effort blocking with average blocking techniques. So for him, I think he needs to add at least, I would say, close to 10 pounds, I think, for the next level. Now, it'll be interesting to kind of see what he comes in at the combine. Does he want to stay light to hopefully run a better 40 time? Does he want to show that he has added some muscle to that frame to alleviate any concerns that teams might have about him being able to play in line? Because he's not Elijah Arroyo. Like, he's not going to be that kind of guy where you want him detached and exclusively a pass catcher. I think Fidonen is a good pass catcher. I think his athleticism is good, but I think he's a guy that you want to be able to play in line, maybe detached a little bit, but that frame obviously needs to be added to. Right now, partially probably due to the frame, there's some inconsistent run blocking in terms of holding the point of attack and his play strength. He had some injuries early in his collegiate career, but this is a prospect that I think he can create space at the catch point. I think he's got functional hands. Like I said, I think he shows effort blocking and average blocking techniques. But for me, this is a guy that I think the pass catching upside and the athleticism is better than what people realize while he was in college. You don't think of Nebraska as this place where you see a lot of big time athletes at the tight end position come out of. But I think Fidonen is a better athlete than people realize. I think he's going to test really well at the combine. I love the movement skills. I love the high pointing ability, the catch radius, his ability to attack the seam, his yak ability after the catch. So there's a lot to like about Fidonen's game. I think he kind of profiles as probably like a early day 3 pick, and it's a really strong class. So I think you have 6 guys who are going to go in the top 100. I think Fidonen kind of fits in with the next wave of guys. So you got like Jake Bridenstole, you got Terrence Ferguson, you got out of Notre Dame, Mitchell Evans. I think Fidonen fits kind of in that tier of players. So I think early day 3 in that round 4, round 5 range, I think you'll see guys like Fidonen, Ferguson, Mitchell Evans. I think that's that next tier of guys after the top 6 or 7. I think Jake Bridenstole is a guy with his athleticism intrigues me a little bit more than most, but I think Fidonen is right there with Ferguson and Mitchell Evans. Maybe you put a Rondé Gatson in there as well. So I have Fidonen right in that like 9-10 range right now. I think that's kind of where he's going to stay. I don't see him maybe he can get to 8, but I my top 7, I think the names are not going to move. But I think after that, Ferguson, Fidonen, Mitchell Evans, and Gadsden, there could be a little bit of movement there when I watch some more film on these guys. We get some combine stuff. But I think that's a tier for me right there. That's like my probably my 4th tier. I have my top tier with just Warren and Loveland. My next tier is like is Taylor and Arroyo, but I think those guys are slightly above Gunnar Helm and Harold Fannin. I almost think there's 2 guys in the first round, 2 guys in the second, 2 guys in the third, and then there's this group of guys where Fidonen is in the early portion of day 3. Let's flip this to the running backs. I have 3 running backs on I want to talk about in terms of my under the radar prospects that I think are seeing their stock rise. So let's talk about the first one here, and that is Bhayshul Tuten out of Virginia Tech. He's 5'8", 211-pound senior. Now, he was at the Senior Bowl, but I didn't see a lot of buzz about him leading into the Senior Bowl week. I hadn't had a chance to get my eyes on him fully besides, watching some Virginia Tech games live, a highlight reel or 2, make some notes on him. But I had a chance over the last week to watch his game and get a better feel for him completely. And this is a prospect that I think some people might be surprised that he could be evaluated, ranked, or go before some higher profile names that we've been talking about here at Saturday Sunday. People have been talking about on Draft Twitter, people in the mainstream. I could see Tuten going higher than a lot of other guys that might be. Like, I have him right now in that like 15 to 17 range, but I could see him going higher than some of these other prospects. And in this draft class, when you say, oh, he's my 15th running back, he's my 16th running back, he's my 17th running back, that is not a knock. That is how great of a class this is, that there's going to be 17 or 18 guys that literally warrant top 4 round, draft grades. And for me, I have Tuten right there as, that early day 3 guy. I don't think he's going to go in day 2, but who knows? I think he's more of a round 4, round 5 guy. But listen, we saw Bucky Irving go there last year. We saw my guy Tyrone Tracy go there last year. There's going to be tons of really high-level prospects at the running back position that are going off the board in rounds 4 and rounds 5. It's just how great of a class this is. Last year, Tuten had 1,159 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns, chipped in with 20 receptions for 81 yards. So I just mentioned it. This is not a guy who's going to be a 3-down player in terms of being a weapon in the passing game. That is, right now, it's more just like a check down option. You're not going to ask him to run any routes, really. You're not going to dial up a lot of things right now. But he's got the explosiveness that I think a team could try to get a little bit more out of him at the next level. But right now, the receiving games, the receiving production, that's some drop issues. That's obviously some areas of development that I'd like to see him improve upon at the next level. He did have some ball security issues over the last couple of years with putting the ball on the floor. Obviously, that's got to be cleaned up. NFL coaches will not tolerate, rookies fumbling the football. That will be the fastest and quickest way to be in the doghouse, especially if you're a day 3 prospect. So those are some areas that we need to see some improvement. But what does he offer? Average size, good frame, very compact, rocked up to 11. We're talking very good athleticism, straight line speed, burst, and acceleration. Home run threat. If he gets to the next level, there's a chance he's going to take it to distance. So high-end, top-end speed, burst, acceleration, very good overall athleticism. I expect him to test really well at the combine. I think the jumps, I think, are probably going to be pretty explosive. It seems like he has a lot of lower body power. He generates a lot of it there. So I think his jumps are going to be really good. I think his 40 time is going to be really good. So that regard, I think he's got good footwork and the ability to one cut. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to generate multiple cuts to make people miss. That's not his game. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not going to in that profile, right? He's not going to make people miss like that. But what he does offer with that footwork and that one cut ability, combined with his straight line athleticism, burst, acceleration, he also has got really good, very good to great contact balance, leg drive, play strength, power, physicality, and toughness. He can break tackles. He can run through tackles. If you try to just, arm tackle him, he's going to run right through it and pick up extra yards. So that combination of the burst, acceleration, and long speed, combined with the contact balance, the leg drive, the power, and his ability and footwork to one cut, he might not, he's not going to be a guy who very elusive, stop, start, cutting ability, meant to make multiple cuts. That's not his game. But he shows the ability to one cut and get upfield. He shows the ability to break tackles and run through tackles, combined with the big play athleticism, speed, burst, acceleration. You're talking about a guy who's going to be a really dynamic player at the next level. I think functional vision, patience, run instincts, and decision-making, I don't think that those are strengths of his game, but I don't think it's also weaknesses of game. I would classify it as functional in that regard. To me, he profiles as a committee running back, best in a gap run scheme on early downs, could be very good in short yardage, very good near the goal line. So I like Tuten's game a lot. I came away way more impressed with him than I thought I would be. And again, I don't have it this way, but if you told me that he went ahead of Ollie Gordon or Trevor Etienne or guys like that, I wouldn't be surprised. I just wouldn't. I think teams are going to like his game a lot. Trevor Etienne, I don't know if I said him. If he goes ahead of those guys, I don't think it's going to be that great of a surprise. Like when I look at my board, it's going to be insane. I'm going to have guys probably from like 8 or 9 through like 18 who are all on that like borderline late round 3, but more likely early day 3 type value in that. Because how many we're only going to probably have like 6, 7 running backs go in the top 100. And I think a lot of those guys, we know who they are: the Genty, the Hampton, the Caleb Johnson, the Travion Henderson. I think Dylan Sampson's going there. Quinshon Junkins is probably going there. So I think those 6 guys are probably locked in to like the top 100. I think we can get another 1 or 2. If I was picking, it would be Jordan James or RJ Harvey. But after that, though, guys like Neal, Giddens, Scattaboo, Damian Martinez, Ollie Gordon, Woody Marks, Trevor Etienne, the next 2 guys I'm going to talk about, Lequint Allen and Brashard Smith, and then right there with Bhayshul Tuten, are all in that mix. That should all be guys who are going to come off who should have a draft grade of like a round 4, round 5 grade. But some of these guys are for sure going to fall down the board a little bit and not really have a chance to go at the end of round 3. But I think you're going to start seeing more buzz. Maybe it'll take the combine, and if he blows up there like I kind of expect him to, I think Bhayshul Tuten is going to be a guy who you're going to see rising up more on the consensus, more being talked about. I think there's spots here that you've heard him talked about. I think it was on the McShay podcast they were talking about him. Len Zerline gave him a pretty high grade. You're going to start to see more of that out there once people really start digging into him and more people start evaluating him. And a guy that wasn't on people's radars, guys that wasn't being talked a lot about before the season started. But I do think now you're going to start to see his stock rise. Another running back I think you're going to see that as well for is Lequint Allen out of Syracuse. This is a guy who you're going to start to see people again. Round 3, round 4 is the buzz that we're starting to see from this guy. Now, again, I think most of these guys, when you say round 3, round 4, are going to end up going in round 4 or round 5 because there's just so many running backs in this class. But Allen out of Syracuse, 6 feet, 207 pounds. This past year, 1,021 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns. He just has a nose for the end zone. 64 receptions for 521 yards and 4 touchdowns. So right off the bat, you are talking about arguably the best pass catching running back in this draft class. So right there, Allen already has the specialization as arguably the best pass catching running back in this class, part of a committee, nose for the end zone. So the pass catching ability, the nose for the end zone, the short yardage or goal line. And then he could also just run, he can play on any down. That's the beauty of Lequint Allen. He good in pass protection, great hands, great receiving ability, great near the end zone. So when you start to add all those things that teams look for, he checks off a lot of boxes in terms of his versatility, which is what I think you're going to see him go higher than a lot of those names I mentioned before, and people are going to be surprised on that. But when you talk about the size, the frame, the pass catching ability, the pass pro ability, short yardage ability, he's going to be versatile enough that you can use him in so many different ways. Now, couple things. I'll get more into the things I like about him. Couple things that are a little bit of concern. The pad level is a little high. He kind of runs with a little bit of an upright running style. I think in some ways I compared him a little bit to a guy like Rachaad White. I don't think he's got Rachaad White's overall athleticism, but I think there's some similarities to their game. The upright running style is one of them. Inconsistent vision. He's not going to be a guy who makes you miss with elusiveness and agility, and I don't think he's got top-end speed. I think the athleticism is probably in that average to above average range. Same thing with the speed, same thing with the acceleration. I think he shows some functional vision and patience. But what do I really like about him? Ideal size and frame at 6 feet, 207. He's got good burst and movement skills, especially in short areas. He's got great receiving skills, hands, and route running ability for a running back. He's got good play strength, contact balance, toughness, and physicality. He's a great goal line runner, and he's good in pass protection. So when you start looking at him as the total package, if the upright running style and the pad level is and the make you miss ability is his only real flaws or concerns, and he checks off all these other areas, that's going to make him very valuable. And you have to understand that teams are looking for those pass catching weapons out of the backfield. Allen is arguably the best one in the class. And when you add that into that, he's also a good runner, good in pass pro, and good near the goal line. I think teams are going to be really impressed with him because he's got a calling card. He's got a specialization in terms of his pass catching ability, but that's not all. If that's all he offered, then maybe he's a 5th round pick. But for Allen, it's not this small little guy who, is a great pass catcher, great in open space. He's not great in open space. Like, he's a different style of pass catching running back who's just a really good pass catching running back, good route runner, good hands, but very good in pass pro. Got the physicality, the toughness, the play strength you love to see, and the notes for the end zone, which we obviously know coaches love as well. So Lequint Allen is a guy, I think he profiles as a pass catching running back, committee running back, short yardage running back. I think he's best in the gap scheme. I would not put him in his own run scheme. I think he's got that round 3, round 4 grade. So right now, like I mentioned, the same thing with Tuten. He's in that like 15 to 17 range for me. It's hard to get him above that because I do love so many of the other running backs. But I think he's probably, if we're talking straight projection, I think Lequint Allen's probably going to go higher than guys that I even have ranked higher, whether that's Devin Neal, whether that's DJ Giddens, whether that's Ollie Gordon. I think you're going to see these guys. And I have them all in the same tier. I don't have these big different tiers here. The running back tier after like the top couple, and then after Genti by himself, and then like maybe 2 in the next tier, maybe 3, then another small tier. Then it's going to be this massive tier with like 10 or 12 guys. And Lequint Allen's going to be in that tier with so many other running backs. You know, a team looks at a guy like Cam Skattebo and they really like what he brings to the table. Well, Lequint Allen offers a lot of the same things. Obviously, he's not as physical as Skattebo, but if Skattebo goes in round 3 and the team can get Lequint Allen in round 4 or round 5, and I don't think it's going to be that big of a gap, that's the question teams are going to be asking themselves. Obviously, we know Skattebo is one of the best pass catching backs in this class as well, but Allen's right there with him. And you can make the case Allen is the best in this class for sure. And then the last running back that I think is on the rise is another guy that I think profiles very similarly to Lequint Allen, and that is Brashard Smith out of SMU, formerly of Miami, former wide receiver at Miami, who then this year went to SMU, became a running back, and had a fantastic final year in college. Senior out of SMU, 5'9", 195 pounds. This past year, 1,332 yards rushing, 14 touchdowns, 39 receptions, 327 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Everyone who's been listening to me for a long time knows that Tyrone Tracy was like a top 5 back for me last year. Brashard Smith's not going to be a top 5 back this year just because of the difference in the class. But the way I liked Tyrone Tracy last year, I have a lot of similar vibes with Brashard Smith. He's not as big, so that's a little bit Tyrone Tracy was a little thicker, more of a compact frame, had almost that Alvin Kamara-like frame, and I comped him a lot to college-level Alvin Kamara, and I still kind of stand by that, right? Like, what Alvin Kamara offered in college was what I saw Tyrone Tracy in college, and I was very impressed with Tyrone Tracy this past year. But Brashard Smith making that conversion from wide receiver to running back, lot to like. Obviously, the size in the frame isn't ideal to be a high volume carrier at the next level. We don't have a lot of high volume carriers at the next level. I think the vision is a little bit inconsistent. He's new to the position, so that the natural run instincts are a little bit up and down at times. Not going to be a guy who runs with a lot of power or play strength. Not going to run through and break tackles a lot with his contact balance. He runs hard, gives good effort. That's just not his area of strength. Doesn't have a lot of leg drive to like move the pile. Unlike Lequint Allen, which is why I think Lequint Allen will go higher than a guy like Brashard Smith, is he does have some struggles in pass protection. Not surprised, a former wide receiver. So those are the areas where Brashard Smith, obviously, new to the position, so some vision and run instinct question marks. And at 195, and a former receiver, the power, the play strength, physicality, the pass holding up in pass pro, those are areas of concern. But what he does offer, yes, he's undersized, but very good athleticism, speed, movement skills, burst and acceleration. He's got the lateral quickness to get to the outside, to be a home run threat. He shows really good footwork, change of direction skills, agility and elusiveness. He can stack multiple cuts on top of each other. Unlike I talked about like Tuten before, even Lequint Allen. Those are not guys who can stack multiple cuts in the open field. Brashard Smith can. Explosive weapon in the open field. He's got great receiving skills and hands. Obviously, the former wide receiver comes in handy there. To me, he's a versatile offensive weapon and a returner at the next level. He could be your pass catching running back. He could be your change of pace back, committee running back. I think he's best in an outside zone run scheme or outside gap run scheme. Explosive returner. So to me, Smith doesn't profile as a guy like Lequint Allen or Bhayshul Tuten who could hold up a lot in short yardage, can carry a heavier workload if you need to. But Brashard Smith offers a guy who, yeah, you can give him 6 to 8 touches, 6 to 8 carries. You can give him 4 or 5 catches. You can use him as a returner. And that intrigue in terms of that unique offensive weapon, I have him penciled as like a round 5 type prospect. Again, star-studded class. So if he falls to round 6 or even round 7, I wouldn't be stunned. But I think his talent is too intriguing. His explosiveness, too intriguing. His pass-catching upside, too intriguing. That I think in that early day 3, I consider round 5 pretty early. It's not super early, but it's also not like I consider like the 6th round or late 5 to the 6th round, like the mid day 3, and then late day 3, like you just sneak in there in the big round 7. But to me, I think he's a guy who warrants going in like that round 5 range. That's kind of where I see a guy like Brashard Smith. Right now, he's my 18th ranked running back. But even where I have him, I think I don't think I have him ahead of guys like Donovan Edwards. I have him ahead of Raheem Sanders, Kyle Monange, Jaden Blue, Jarquez Hunter, Khalil Mullins, Taj Brooks, Phil Maffa. Other people might not have him there, but I think the explosiveness that he offers makes him a really intriguing player. So I have him ahead of those guys, but those guys are probably in that round 5 to round 6 range as well in terms of their draft grades. So I think those are guys that'll be similar to where he is. I think Allen and Tuten are slightly ahead of him because I think those are guys that could go in the early portion, like the real early portion of day 3, like round 4, where I think a guy like Smith is more of like a round 5 or early round 6 type guy because he's not going to be as versatile to handle a heavy workload. But if you're not looking for that and you're looking for just a change of pace, pass catching, returner type guy, Smith offers a ton of upside in that regard. So I have him, like I said, at 18 right now, but I'm a fan of his game. And if a team took him even higher than I had him, I wouldn't call it crazy, especially since he's new to the position. There could still be room for growth and development in terms of the vision, the patience, the natural run instincts. Maybe could even add a little bit more weight to that frame and get to like the 200, 202, 203 range. But I wouldn't want it to come at the offset of losing his explosiveness and big play ability. So there it is, guys. 6 prospects that I think are under the radar, more nationally consensus right now, draft Twitter right now, but I think their stock is on the rise, and I think it'll continue to rise in the pre-draft process here. And these guys are all 6 players, might be guys who are taken ahead of big names that some people are going to be surprised with come the NFL draft. But don't be surprised when Tyler Shough goes ahead of some big name quarterbacks. Don't be surprised when Fidonen goes in the early portion of day 3, maybe ahead of some other, more well-known tight ends. And don't be surprised when some of these running backs, especially Tuten and Lequint Allen, go ahead of some more of the bigger name running backs in this star-studded running back class. I do think it's going to happen based on their explosiveness, their versatility, and what they offer for the next level. If you're enjoying this content, guys, please get over to the website, SS Football. Fastest and easiest way to get there. For $9.99, you can get all of our premium content. You get our scouting notebook. I just put these 6 detailed film evals in there. I have so many more to do over the next couple weeks, and then updates to them as I watch more film on guys I already have full film reports in there on. You get the rankings notebook. It has our draft rankings. It has our Devy rankings. It has our dynasty rookie rankings. It has our overall positional dynasty rankings. It'll have our tiered rankings. It'll have our new dynasty rookie rankings. the weekend of the NFL draft. And then in April, you get the draft projections notebook, which has tabs for every position, offense and defense, a snapshot of how they win, some developmental areas, their combine measurements, their combine testing numbers, projected in everything we're hearing, listening, and reading on how we expect it to come off the board. It's a must-have for any diehard draft junkie on draft weekend. The results we've had in terms of projecting the 32 players to come off the board round one, the 100 players to come off the board in the first 3 rounds, and projecting every pick. We have tabs for each of those, keeping track in real time as well on draft weekend. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us, and we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.